Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have 5 chilling cryptid scary encounters. You guys seem to quite enjoy these cryptid stories, so please be sure to leave a like and comment, letting me know if you want something different. Also, what's your New Year's resolution for 2019? I'm curious to know. Anyway, let's begin. Number 1. I used to work at a cheese factory on the edge of a cornfield in southwestern Minnesota. There were a series of days in the summer of '04 or maybe '05, where it was so hot that the milk being delivered to us in trucks would evaporate before we got it. It made work easy. The dearth of milk denied us any actual labour. But management wouldn't let us not come to work, so we would show up and mess around all shift. I was working nights at the time. It was 2 or 3 a.m. and I was out in the loading dock watching bats fly around the floodlights because I liked being out in the cool night air. The corn was about as high as my shoulder, so about 5'10". As I was watching the bats, I looked down at the edge of the cornfield. Something was moving there. It was the size of a small child and very, very skinny, pale, with something that looked like a head of straight, black hair. It moved in a sort of jerky gait, like someone dancing the robots, badly. It moved in chunks, legs, then hips, then torso, shoulders, neck, and finally head. It was looking back into the cornfield, or at least it felt like it was. I felt prickly all over. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a heron or something at first, but it looked too much like a person. It didn't move like a person though. Gradually, step by step, it moved towards me. Letting my curiosity better my fear, I moved toward the edge of the dock, which was raised a few feet off the ground. When I got within a few feet of the edge, the thing looked at me. I was paralyzed. I could have run, but I was stuck somewhere between terrified and intrigued. It moved its face, still pointed at me. It ratcheted its body in that disconcerting, jerky movement toward the cornfield and went into it. I tried to watch where the field moved as it passed, but the corn remained perfectly still. I noticed that all the crickets were silent. After a few minutes, nothing happened. I stood out there for an hour, but it never came back. I never saw it again. Number 2. My strange story took place on the 26th of December in 2009, I think. My church was on a retreat in Indiana in a forest. The place we stayed at was a small building in the centre of the forest. We decided that evening to go out and play in the forest with the children, so we came up with a game to play. It was like police. The kids were the police and we would pick an adult to be the hostage. So when we began the game, we had to find the adult hiding in the forest in the middle of the night. So we started going around the back of the building and we spotted a tall figure. It had to be at least 6 feet tall. It was running towards the trees where there was a small open area with tall grass that goes up to your knees. It ran with its arms at its side, but it stopped at the edge of the tall grass, as if to wait for us to get closer. We chased after it, thinking it was an adult. When we were finally a few yards away, it dove into the grass and started to crawl very fast, almost snake-like. We got weirded out, but stood there staring at it. When it got across the tall grass, it began to climb a tree. It looked somewhat like a deformed cat-like animal when it was climbing. Then a few moments later, a kid yelled, "I see him!" and was pointing in an opposite direction. We saw a similar figure running a couple yards away, so we chased it, but then it vanished behind a tree. Turns out, a few minutes later, we found the adult hiding in the parking lot in the front of the building the whole time. So who knows what we saw that night in that forest. At least 15 kids saw the thing with me, so I know I'm not crazy. Number 3. This story takes place, I think, in the summer of '95, maybe making me 9 years old. Practically every other year, my family would take a trip to Florida. We would usually go to Disney World, but my mother was getting sick of it. So that year we actually didn't go to Disney World, to my sister and my dismay. On one of the days, we were on a beach. I don't remember what the beach was called, but the people sitting next to us mentioned it being the bottom tip of Florida. After a while of nothing happening, everybody was either in the ocean or sunbathing silently. A woman sitting to the left of us pointed past us to her right, asking, "What is that?" We all turned and looked to a surprisingly vacant corner of the beach. There were no people down there, but what was there was something really strange. We all got up to get a better look, very quickly forming a crowd around it. If I had to describe the creature we saw in one word, the word would be cartoonish. I will never forget what it looked like. It was green and looked like a ball of slime about the size of a basketball. It had tentacles resting on the ground around it with two longer tail-like tentacles sticking out of its back. The thing that was the most bizarre and made it look cartoonish were its eyes, which were on stalks that stood about a foot off its body. The eyes looked creepily human and just looked at us in an almost disinterested way. The other strange thing about it was its mouth, which never seemed to close, and where you'd expect teeth were tooth-shaped fleshy protrusions. No one, not even the creature, seemed scared, and after a while it lazily slithered back into the ocean. There were roughly 10 witnesses to this thing, and we all spent most of our time talking about what it must have been. One idea was that it was a parasite organism from a much larger creature, one also possibly never identified. Number 4. You will never believe what I saw one very cold, dry November night. My family and I moved into a new house up on a hill on a little back road in the very small town of Fort Gay. Fort Gay sits right on the east side of Kentucky. The population of my town then was probably just a couple of thousand. My family and I were unpacking. We had not yet put the furniture in its rightful places, and everything was still in boxes. Overwhelmed with working all day, I retired around 11 p.m. I put my little brother on the couch and I took his bed, since my bed wasn't put together yet. His room faces the front of the house. His windows are around 20 to 25 feet off the ground or so. I was looking out the window when I saw it. It stood about 7 feet tall. I had no idea what it was, but I was frozen. I had never been that scared in all of my life. All I could do was lay there and just stare at this thing. It was sitting in a tree about 50 feet or so off the ground, about 50 feet from the house across the yard. It felt like an eternity. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even blink. It had big, red, bright glowing eyes looking dead into my face. I finally worked up enough courage to close my eyes and put my head under the covers, when all of a sudden, this thing smacked the window. I went through the house screaming, "There's something outside." I was crying. My mom and dad looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you? It looks like you've seen a ghost." My face was snow white. I said, "I don't know what it was, but please, Daddy, don't go outside." I begged and I begged. He came back in and said there was nothing out there. I kept screaming, saying, "Yes, there is. Yes, there is." When I explained to them what I had saw and how I felt, they said I was crazy. But to this day, I will not go outside by myself, and even in the day, someone still has to watch me to my car. I have heard of some pretty crazy things going up on that road, but I never expected to experience anything myself. My husband and I have went to the theatres and watched Mothman Prophecies. I was reliving that night all over again. The way they described feeling and what saw was remarkable. My husband looked over at me and said, "Isn't that what you described to me when we first started dating?" I couldn't say a word. After that moment, I knew what I saw. I believe in all heart of hearts I saw the Mothman. It's just a little weird, I only live about 80 miles south of Point Pleasant, but all that took place 37 years ago. It was exactly 32 years to this month when I saw it. Number 5. Back in September of 2004, I was hiking of Kyoto, Japan. I had decided to leave the touristy area and set off alone in a random direction towards the mountains. I found myself on an old trail through the forest. After a while I encountered an old man with a long white beard. He carried a staff and was dressed in coarse blue robes like a peasant out of a samurai movie. He saw me and told me to follow him. Being more curious than anything, I walked after him and he led me further into the forest. He spoke at length about the beauty of nature, how people cut down forests and polluted the earth, and told me that humans must learn to protect and respect nature. During the whole exchange, he never spoke about himself or asked any questions of me. After a while, he said he had to leave and showed me another trail, saying I should take it when I wanted to go back to the city. He then left by that trail. I happened to pass the same place on the way back that evening, so I took the trail the old man showed me. Only minutes later, I ended up completely lost and couldn't even find the trail itself to retrace my steps. It was getting dark out, and as I shone my flashlight around, I noticed an old white fox watching me from nearby. I could have sworn it was watching me with an amused look on its face, but as soon as I shone my light in it, it ran off into the bushes. I remember reading all sorts of old Japanese stories and legends about fox spirits that can take human form, and I feel like I may have seen one that day. Well, thank you all for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. Please let me know down in the comments section what kind of stories you'd like to see. I am working on a folklore story at the moment. Just taking a little bit of time to come together. But yeah, if you enjoyed, please like and comment. If you're new, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for listening. I'll see you all in the next one.